Can you recall the day that you realized that you are the enemy? Can you recall the day when you realized that the enemy is not over there, but in fact, it is you? Now, I did a video on this a while back, and I'll see if I can link it into the end of this one. But there's a turning point where we realize that although we we try to follow the rules, we don't lie, we go through life with as many positive virtues as possible. None of us are perfect, and obviously sin creeps in, but with the truest intent and integrity to lead a life of honor and to realize that evil exists on such a level that evil has now pegged you as the enemy. Now, for most of us, that realization has only come in the last few months or few years at the best. And yet it's getting more pronounced. Now, we all remember Gotham City, what it stood for and what that city was portrayed to be. The chaos, destruction, and who was running the city. And now we figure out, we've been taught who is the true enemy of the state. Those who are standing up for good and righteousness, who are speaking the truth against, at one point we called it craziness. They become the enemies. You know, there's something when a bully comes up and hits somebody and steals their lunch money, and the somebody who was just attacked and robbed, call it what it is, battery, they turn and ask for help, and now the bully bullies them even further for being a tattletale or a whiner. Or no, when you set something on that path that doesn't switch, self-defense is not being a bully. And yet when we stand up for ourselves or speak the truth, somehow we become the enemy. As we turn to the Bible, we can look at Romans 8:9. You, however, are controlled not by the flesh, but by the Spirit, if the Spirit of God lives in you. And if anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, he does not belong to Christ. You, however, are not in the realm of the flesh, but in the realm of the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of God lives in you. We continue 1 Corinthians 15:39. All flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one flesh of men, and another flesh of beasts, and another flesh of birds, and another of fishes. Aramaic Bible and plain English states, but not every body is equal to another. And for there is the body of a man, and another of an ox, and another of a bird, and another of fish. And yet we were welcome. For anybody who wasn't quite clear on where they stand in society right now, we have been told that we are the enemy. We have been told of the horrors that we have done. We have been told and put in our place. And yet, of course, the wrong word was put in there. We know that it's evil calling out good. We know that the evil has done all these things on the list, very sadly. And yet, rather than taking ownership, pointing the finger in the other direction and blaming you. John 16:7-8 teaches us, the Bible tells us about a war that we cannot always see. It is a worldwide war between good and evil. It is a war between light and darkness, or Jesus and Satan. In this war, God respects our free choice. He will never force anyone to do anything. In this war, God sends his Holy Spirit to help men and women understand the Bible truth. Now we are taught to put on the armor of God. right? I believe that's Romans 6. And there are 6 parts to the armor of God. We are armed with understanding where we came from, what is offered for us to go to, and the stories in between that tell us how other men and women have lived their life. The trials and tribulations, the challenges, and how they had been blessed by God. We are also taught in the Bible of Baal and the sacrifices and the evils of Satan and the main destruction of trying to teach us that God does not exist and Jesus wasn't God on earth. And yet, during this period of time, more people's eyes are being opened and ears are being opened to the truth as an understanding that what's going on right now, as the president of what had been known one of the greatest countries to ever exist on this planet, the leader of the free world, stood and openly divided our country after telling us that warships would be used against us, his own people. He now defined exactly which people those would be. Again, the greatest blessing that I have ever known, the greatest blessing is that I know my Father in heaven, that through the valley of the shadow of death and darkness, that I know I am not alone. And for that, I have strength to move one step ahead and one step ahead, even in the darkness. And we know the darkness is real. We know it's very real on many levels. And we know, especially for Christians, for many, the darkness is called depression. And so many people are going through periods of depressions, and we're going to see it even more as the economy shrinks and struggles persist and families fall apart. And unfortunately, people pass away. And yet the light in that valley of darkness or the depression is always shining. But we have to remember the war on this planet, the war between one man and another, is not truly the discrepancies between one man and his brother. The war is actually fought on a whole nother level. It is truly a battle of the final war between good and evil. So I ask you again, when did you realize that you are the enemy? And what have you chosen to do with that knowledge? As we learn to shine our lights brighter. You know, a light in the brightness of the sun is nice to know it's there. But in the darkness, to look around and see another light and another light and another light, all of a sudden there is no more darkness. Who can you be a light for today? Blessings to you on this day. Have a blessed afternoon.